welcome to Fluff in the Corporate Space by Saffron Conscious. I'm your host, MC, the Corporate Heart Guide. Our episode today is titled Micro Moments of Return. If pressure disrupts coherence, then leadership is not built in big breakthroughs. It is built in micro returns, a breath, a pause, a moment of noticing the tension gathering in your shoulders, a moment of feeling your feet on the ground, a choice not to answer immediately, a decision to take one more breath before sending the email, a moment where you notice, I am becoming reactive. And instead of judging yourself for it, you return. These moments seem small, almost insignificant, but they are not. Because every one of these moments interrupts unconscious momentum. And leadership is often nothing more than this: the ability to interrupt yourself before the system escalates through you. Think about what happens when pressure enters a room. Someone receives difficult news. A deadline moves. A senior leader becomes frustrated. A team member makes a mistake. A client is unhappy. Someone says something that touches a nerve. And suddenly, the room changes. Voices become sharper. People start defending themselves. Someone withdraws. Someone speaks too quickly. Someone sends the email they probably should have waited an hour to send. And before anyone has consciously decided what is happening, the system has taken over. This is what pressure does. It creates momentum. And momentum is powerful because it can make our reactions feel inevitable. Of course I snapped. Of course I became defensive. Of course I shut down. Of course I had to fix everything. Of course I said yes. And of course I couldn't think. But there's a space between what happens to us and what we do next. Sometimes that space is enormous. Sometimes it is only 3 seconds. And those 3 seconds matter. That is the micro moment of return. It is the moment where you come back to yourself before you continue. Not because you have suddenly become perfectly calm. Not because the pressure has disappeared. Not because you have figured everything out, but because you simply notice, something is happening inside of me. My breathing has changed. My jaw is tight. My shoulders are up. My thoughts are racing. I'm preparing to defend myself. I'm about to say something I don't actually mean. And then you return. One breath, one pause, one moment of awareness. And suddenly you have created a little bit of space. And space changes things. Because when there is no space, we react. When there is space, we can choose. And I think this is one of the most underestimated dimensions of leadership. We often imagine leadership as the ability to make big decisions, to have vision, to inspire people, to communicate clearly, to solve complex problems. And yes, all of those things matter. But there's another kind of leadership that happens much earlier. It happens inside the body, before the meeting, before the decision, before the conversation, before the words leave your mouth. There's a moment where you can ask, what is happening in me right now? And that question can change everything, because the body often knows before the mind catches up. Your shoulders know. Your stomach knows. Your breathing knows. Your jaw knows. Your body begins telling you something is happening here. And instead of overriding it, you listen. Not to become obsessed with yourself, not to analyze every sensation, but simply to become available to yourself again. That is what I mean by return. You return to your breath. You return to your body. You return to what matters. You return to your values. You return to the person you want to be in the moment, because pressure has a way of making us temporarily forget ourselves. We become the urgency. We become the deadline. We become the conflict. We become the person's disappointment. We become the problem that needs to be solved immediately. And then we lose our center. A micro return says, wait, I am here. I don't have to become the pressure. I can meet the pressure without becoming it. And sometimes that is the most powerful leadership move available to you. Let me give you a very ordinary example. Someone sends you an email, you read it, and immediately something in you rises. You feel accused, you feel misunderstood, you feel angry. Your fingers are already moving. You are writing the response, and it is a brilliant response. You have all the evidence. Every point is perfectly articulated. You're going to set the record straight. And then you notice your shoulders. You notice your breathing. You notice the heat in your body, and you stop. You don't delete the email. You don't pretend you are not angry. You simply don't allow your first reaction to become your final action. You take a breath. Maybe you walk away from your computer. Maybe you make tea. And then you come back 20 minutes later. And suddenly, you can see something you couldn't see before. Maybe the email wasn't actually an attack. Maybe it was badly worded. Maybe there was something valid underneath it. Maybe there wasn't. But now you have a choice. That is a micro return. And imagine if we practiced that throughout the day. Not dramatic transformations, not a complete reinvention of ourselves, just small returns before entering the meeting. Breathe before answering the difficult question. Pause when you notice your shoulders tightening. Soften when you realize you are rushing. Slow down when you hear yourself becoming defensive. Listen when you're about to say yes because you're afraid of disappointing someone. Wait when you don't know what to do. Stay. That last one might be one of the hardest because we have been taught to equate movement with progress. If something feels uncertain, we want to act. If something feels uncomfortable, we want to fix it. If something feels quiet, we want to fill the silence. But sometimes leadership is not knowing what to do yet. Sometimes leadership is having enough coherence within yourself to not manufacture an answer simply because everyone is uncomfortable with not having one. That is a micro return too. I would like to invite you to practice micro returning in those moments when everything around feels hard, feels rushed, and feels urgent. Let's practice micro moments because life is made of these small moments. A culture is made of these small moments. A team is made of these small moments. Relationships too are made of these small moments. And leadership happens in those small moments, whether we are conscious of it or not. Remember, flow with ease and gentleness, and let's continue navigating the currents of our own lives. Until next time, goodbye.